The March 14th, 2023 Township Township Regular Commission meeting is now called to order. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Any comments on the consideration of the agenda? Got a couple of things tonight and a couple of reports. Hearing none, do I call for anything on that, Sarah?
I just need a motion for approval then. And just to remind everybody to speak into your microphones, make sure they're turned on with the green lights.
And give me some grace in leading the meeting. Thank you. Do I have a motion for the consideration of the agenda?
I move to accept the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. Is there any conflict of interest in any of the agenda items tonight? For any members of the commission?
No.
Okay. Is there a motion on that?
Nope.
No. Okay, a review of the meeting minutes from February 14th. Any comments, changes, or revisions to that?
You do need a motion for this.
I have a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting from February 14th, 2023.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from February 14th, 2023.
Do I have a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Awesome. We're off to a running start. Any public comment on the agenda items tonight?
Michelle, would you like to speak right now?
There will be a spot during the public hearing to speak specifically about the sign.
Okay.
Okay.
Hearing none. Move on to item number 7, ongoing reports. Zoning administrators report.
You have the report on your desk for recent permits, land divisions, ZBA cases, and enforcement actions. So we do have a hearing next week for the Volkers tickets that were issued. That's that formal hearing that's listed there near the bottom. I have nothing additional. No, nothing additional. So, and if anybody has any questions.
Okay, any comments or questions on the zoning administrators report? So it's been an active or a less active winter?
I would say less active
Okay.
in general. Yeah, permits kind of died down. They typically do in the winter time, but it's been kind of a mild winter. So sometimes people get an itch to start building right away because there's not as much snow. But
Right.
I mean, we've had a couple of permits come in recently, but not too bad. And we haven't had applications, for the planning commission. I would anticipate for the planning commission to see the permit for the airport, like they do the Memorial Day.
Right.
He's reached out about doing that again. So I don't have an application right now, but I would anticipate that you will see that likely in May unless there's a special meeting, just because of the deadline for the April meeting. We haven't seen anything. So now the next deadline is for May.
Okay. Do I have a motion on this? Or this is
Don't need
just
one. Nope.
Informational.
Informational, yeah.
Okay. Now let's go to item 7B, ZBA report.
Your ZBA member's not here tonight, Kevin. We did have a ZBA meeting in February that was for a setback variance from the road. and that was denied. We have a meeting tomorrow night to approve minutes. The case that was on the agenda has been withdrawn from that. So it'll just be a meeting tomorrow night to approve those minutes from February.
Okay, and how about the TLT Board Representative and Planning Commission report?
Yeah, basically just the last couple of meetings, we've just been taking care of the budget, doing everything with the budget. We just finished that last Tuesday, had our yearly meeting with the public's comment, and we're ready to get started on the new year.
Any comments or questions on the board report? Number 7's done. Correspondence.
No correspondence. Oh, you know what I forgot to mention during my report, if I may go back just a moment?
Sure.
You received an email, and then I think on your desk is about that citizen planner program. So you'll see in your bylaws where it says you're required to take it. We are also talking about our bylaws, so I guess you could amend that to take that out if you don't want to. But they're offering a class in Boyne City. Each of these nights, there's 6 nights to go to that class, and I would encourage you, if you are available those nights, to go to that. They do offer it also online by yourself, but I just feel like you won't get as much out of it if you're taking it, reading to yourself and watching a PowerPoint presentation. You can't interact or ask questions. That is an option. It's self-paced, but like I said, I think you would get more out of going either on a Zoom or in person to do that. I don't know. Laura, did you take the class probably when you first got on? Yeah. Yeah. So,
Do they go in the order of the bullets?
yeah.
And is it uncommon to go to some but not all?
I don't know exactly how the program works. I think to become a true citizen planner, you got to go to all the classes, but you can reach out to Cara Kelly, the contact at the bottom here, and see kind of how that all works. I don't know if at the end, Laura, you may know, do you get a certificate at the end? Is there a test at the end?
I don't remember if there's a test, but there's a certificate.
So Cara would have more information about that.
I did check
Mm-hmm.
on, because I am going to be going, but I have a conflict on one of the nights, and you can miss up to 2,
Okay.
but you had to, in order to get the certification, you have to make those up online.
Okay.
Because the second bullet and third bullet are kind of right in the center of the bullseye of some of the work we're doing with planning for the future community, the function and importance of master plan, then implementing the plan with zoning.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And we'll keep an eye out for other training. I think I sent out an email that had some Association of Planning training. Some of it that we did last year, some of the same classes as that. But we're always looking out for other opportunities for you.
Okay. Item number 9, any new business? Item A, public hearing, the zoning and ordinance on signs.
Sure. Let me just give a brief update on this. I know that many of the members are already here, but just for the benefits of the public, just a quick update on why we're doing it and where we're at. And then you can open it up for public comment before board discussion and decision on it. So this amendment came out of the draft zoning ordinance rewrite after the Planning Commission decided to kind of put pause on that and work through the existing zoning ordinance and update sections, most pressing sections, I guess, in the zoning ordinance. So we started with signs. Signs is a big one. 2015, there was a Supreme Court decision that talked about content neutral signs. And our sign section of our zoning ordinance is not content neutral in any way. And so when you say content neutral, you can't read the sign to tell what type of sign it is. So in our existing ordinance, for example, we have specific regulations for real estate signs and what are some other examples? But a real estate sign or like a garage sale sign has a different than a real estate sign, or an open house sign is different than the other two. And you can't write language like that. You just have to we call them a small temporary sign. So that's what this comes out of. So that's why it's kind of boiled down a lot from your existing ordinance to the sign language. So I think it's been 2 meetings. The planning commission has kind of worked through this and refined some of the sign language. A lot of this is very similar to our existing sign language, but there are some changes. In the existing signs, for instance, we talked about this at one of the meetings. We have, for example, authorized with sign permit. We have a business identification sign. That's an on-premise sign. You can have one. It's 50 square feet, and those are in your commercial areas. And then we also allow an advertising and display sign, same definition, that allows 2 signs up to 25 square feet. So my reading of this is that a business potentially could have 3 signs total. One can be 50, 2 can be 25. They can be on the building or freestanding. In the proposed language, so that was from our current language, in our proposed language, we're down to 1 sign, except for in the village business and commercial, if the property is over 200 feet wide, then you can have an additional sign that's a little bit smaller. We talked about that last month. So these are numbers I just pulled out to put in here. So there may be some discussion about sizes of that, but I looked at the dimensioning of the parcels. So this is on page 2 is what I'm talking about. The maximum size, maximum area, and the maximum quantity. Trying to not allow every parcel to have 2 signs, but I found that 200 kind of was a nice space for the frontage. So if somebody had that, or if say they had a corner lot, if you had 100 on each road, that would count as your 200. So you could get a second sign on the corner for your freestanding signs. So trying to give a little bit more signage to those larger parcels, corner lots there. We've standardized the wall signage. It's specific to walls. We didn't really call out, like I said, between freestanding and wall signs in the existing ordinance. So this is calling out the wall signs. We have on here 20% of the facade or 25 square feet. You can break that up in whatever number of signs you want to do to get up to the 25 square feet. So that allows a little flexibility for the applicants or property owners. And then the small temporary signs, this is what we're talking about. Like, so your political signs would fall into here. Sale today signs would fall into these temporary signs, as long as they're a temporary sign. Your real estate signs would fall into the small temporary sign section. We had some discussions about the size being 8 square feet. That's where the whiteboard comes in. Kind of some examples of what the different square footage potentially could look like. So the 8 square feet can be broken up in as many signs as you want to get up to 8 square feet. So you could have 8 1 square foot signs if somebody wanted to do that. Or 2 4 square feet for that. And then kind of walking through the rest of it's important, but kind of boring language, you know, how to deal with non-conforming signs, unsafe signs, that type of language. There wasn't much talked about there. I do want to know, this ordinance amendment does not allow for any billboards. So any existing billboards would be non-conforming. They can change the face, you know, maintain it, but they wouldn't be able to add any additional billboards. Those are considered off-premise signage, so we don't have any off-premise signage language in here. So those would not be allowed. And something we didn't really talk about, but is always an option or something that could be talked about is electronic message signs or LED signs. Those are not allowed under this current ordinance as proposed. It is something, if you want to talk about, we can go down that road to talk about for that. And then on your desk, but kind of emailed out last minute, Jackie did do some work at looking at some different signs and the square footage of them. Last month, we talked about this Berkshire Hathaway sign. That's the last one on the back of the page, trying to figure out how big that was and how tall it was. Getting a little bit of details and trying to figure some of that out. And that came from, do you like the look of it? Do you not like the look of it? the freestanding signage, we're considering limiting the height in the commercial districts to 10 feet. So that does have some impact, like on this Berkshire sign, there's this 14. You would make it a non-conforming sign, it can continue as it is, they can change the faces. But if they tore it out, they'd have to reduce it down to be 10 feet in size, and they would have to come down to the 50 square feet from the 64. So I think that's all for me. Does anybody have any questions before we open to the public?
I have some questions. Would it be more proper to ask them now or wait till after public comment?
Why don't you ask them now, and then we can go into public comment?
So one in particular on the wall sign standards.
Mhm.
Why was the max quantity for type not applicable? Because it's already covered by the maximum total square footage?
Yeah, I mean, we could almost take that column out. Like, the reason it's in there is to be consistent with the other tables. But yeah, we would, it's just 20% of the facade up to 25 square feet.
Yeah, so that's
So-
the comment I wrote there. I wrote a question for all combined with a question mark.
Yeah.
And if that's clear to everybody else, then we don't need to have that. But that was what I assumed when I saw the NA,
Yeah.
that we either write in for total for all combined, unless that's clear to everybody else. And then in the intent and purpose, I struggle when things are defined with, item B, to keep the number of signs and sign message at the level reasonably necessary to identify. And then C was to keep signs within a reasonable scale. So the reasonable scale we define, reasonably necessary, I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah. Reasonably necessary based on reasonable people, what they find to be reasonable.
Okay.
So essentially you're saying, the 7 planning commissioners, and then the county planning commission, I don't know if it's 7 or 9 of them. And then you have the township board, another 6 between all of you. Hopefully you're reasonable.
Depends on the day.
But, kind of the consensus among all those groups that are representing the community, that's what you're determining to be reasonable.
I wouldn't be opposed to calling out on why the, where we've got NA.
What, I'm sorry, Laura.
I'm not opposed to what.
Can you turn your mic on?
The NA on the wall sign standards for the max quantity.
So do you think maybe it should say something like up to maximum area or something like that? Does that make it clear?
I think it needs something to be clear. 20% of facade not to exceed 25 square feet.
Okay, up to maximum area allowed.
That could be 8 signs.
Yep. Okay. I can add that in. That's perfect. Yeah, that'll work.
I mean,
What did you say again, Bill? I didn't get that down.
on the wall sign
Right.
standards on page 3, has a max area total for type 20% of facade not to exceed 25 square feet. There's a column for maximum quantity, like how many signs could be on the building there in the picture? I guess it would be as many as it take, as long as it didn't exceed 20% of the facade, or it didn't exceed 25 square feet in total of all signs.
Mhm.
And so the bigger the building, the bigger the sign or the more signs, which makes sense.
Right.
Okay.
Makes sense.
And then I had one more question on the small temporary sign standards that has a time. The definition can be displayed for a limited duration of time, is not intended to be a permanent display. There are a lot of restaurants, not here and not now, that have a sign like that out all the time for daily specials.
Mhm.
I think that's reasonable. But if it's up for a limited time,
Well, when they don't have those specials anymore, then it's gone, so it's not It's not like it's gonna be there for 30 years.
True.
I mean,
Right, so if they close, it's gone.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So I don't think if there was any good way to do it, but that C under small temporary sign standards, if there does happen to be a date on there, then we're going to catch those under that 5 days. And if not, forever, you could, really.
Right. I mean, it would just be, that's where it's like, I'm thinking like pancake breakfast this weekend, that needs to get pulled within 5 days.
Yeah.
Unless there's one every weekend, or, but that's kind of more to catch the political signs than any other type of sign. Or like a garage sale sign or something like that, potentially. But it could also, down at the grocery store, if they have a seafood sale this weekend, you'd want to have that wrapped up. They likely would, because they're not going to want to advertise a sale they're not having,
That's what I was
but you never know.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Before we open it with public comment?
As far as the illuminated signs, does anyone have any appetite for that?
For the LED ones?
Yeah, sorry.
The subcommittee, when we were met and talked about the draft zoning ordinance, the subcommittee was pretty much like, we're not going to talk about it. The planning commission can talk about it if they have interest in it. Currently, the ordinance doesn't allow the LED signs. There hadn't been a huge appetite related to it. I think you may have had an application for one in a PUD. I might be wrong. No? Okay. But right now, they're not currently allowed, so it's not changing any language. It would be something if you wanted to add that type of signage in as an option.
I don't want to.
Yeah. They can still do, the manual changeable copy, like down at the nursery or greenhouse down the way, they change their letters.
Mhm.
So that's an option with your signage still, just the LED sign would not be allowed.
Would that be allowed? And I don't think anyone would do this, but if it was illuminated but it didn't move, that would be allowed because under like the flashing, it doesn't flash, it doesn't move at all.
Yeah, let me look back at that
Is
language.
that under the illumination section?
It was under
The prohibited talks
flashing.
about flashing.
Yeah. So, yeah, I suppose.
I guess if you bought one, I was thinking that if you bought one, you probably wouldn't bother buying one if
Right.
you couldn't make a change. However, if I turn it off tonight and tomorrow I turn it on and it's a different thing,
Mhm.
Well, the police court guy asked if he could leave his lit if it didn't move and change things because of the no LED in the ordinance at the time.
okay. Does it?
So what is
Call
that?
out?
The current,
What is it? What's that light considered at the gas station?
the light on the gas station signs?
Yeah, like the price per gallon, is that not
Right.
LED?
No, those are LED signs.
So, okay, and what about the Torchlight Cafe when that's lit up? Is that considered LED?
Right. So it's more about the changeable copy, the changeable letter. Usually you write the language to say that you can have changeable letter signs and they may be electronic or manual. If they are electronic, then they can only change blah, 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 is usually how the language has them. Most ordinances now have LED signs in them, so that's what you'll frequently see something like that.
So do we have it? Where is it in here that we call out LEDs?
So I think that what we should do is under probably under animated signs, we should just clarify about the LED, under, starting on page 10 for animated signs. Probably add in, so it's got environmentally activated mechanically activated and flashing. I might just add a number 4 and just say that electronic.
Which page? There's
It's
only
not
9
10.
pages.
Oh, I'm,
4.
oh, yeah,
I
10
think
out
you're
of the
under
packet.
persimmon. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Page 7 is where I would put it, 7 of 9.
Okay.
I would add a 4 near the top and just say electronic message signs. Are not permitted, or, I mean, this is under prohibited signs anyways.
I guess that's, I should, probably shouldn't say anything because I don't think that they're terrible. I agree with the flashing, but I don't know that I would want to oppose.
So under what you're saying now, the gas light, station lights, and torchlight cafe light signs shouldn't be there?
Yeah.
Well, then
I mean, I don't know
like
how the
that.
sign, I don't know how their sign situation, the history of their signs, because they have a lot of signage down there of all various sizes. And I don't know, I just don't know the history to that, to the gas station sign.
Is the issue, the concern, the level of brightness? I mean, LED is just a bulb, but I think
Right.
more things are going to LED. If we're talking about how bright something is,
And they shut that off when they're closed.
We do have that lumens.
Mhm.
Yeah, we have that in there somewhere about brightness. Well, I don't know where it went. It's in there somewhere.
I know we reorganized it because we moved the tables up, and so I'm used to seeing a different,
Page 6.
Page 6.
Yeah.
so with the current language, it talks about flashing, and if it talks about an hour. For the purpose of this ordinance, flashing will not be defined as occurring. The cyclical period between on and off phases of illumination exceeds 1 hour. And then it talks about this prohibition shall not apply to permitted electronic message signs. And that's because we had a big comment on, are we going to allow them or not? And the planning commission didn't really talk about it at any of our last couple of meetings. So what's the general thoughts on that? I get the gas station sign. You're comfortable with the gas station sign. Would you be comfortable with
I'm comfortable with what they got. I'm comfortable with what the cafe's got. Now, I don't know if anybody's noticed, but if you drive through QA in the little store there, the new owners put a great big lit up vape sign. I'm not really okay with that because it's super bright. I mean, it shines all the way across the street. Not that it just says vape, but it's super bright. It's very tacky, but I don't think what these guys are doing up here is wrong. I mean, if we vote on this and approve this, does that mean they're gonna have to take those signs down?
No, they'd be non-conforming,
Okay.
so they can continue to exist. I mean, when I'm thinking of an electronic message sign, I'm typically thinking of, the one that personally drives me crazy is, there's a new car wash in Traverse City, kind of by 4 Mile, between 3 Mile and 4 Mile, and it looks like a TV, and it's huge, and it sits right next to the road.
It's very attractive.
Yeah.
I love it.
That type, typically, we're talking about more so than a gas station sign. We're talking about that type of a sign.
And
And then
they maybe belong only in certain spots?
that's what potentially, I mean, it would just be where do you feel that it's appropriate? And the choices you have is the commercial districts, which is kind of spotty throughout the township. So they're closer to the residential, or you have the village, kind of the village business, which your villages are mixed use and have residential too, and it's a denser area. So, excuse me, I'm not sure. I don't know the right answer to that. I've seen them in villages. Like I said, I have a friend that has one that's lives next to a school. They have an LED sign. It does have a noise. They shut it off at 10 or 11 o'clock at night, but it's a school. Schools aren't regulated by zoning anyways. So they just do it out of a courtesy. But that's kind of where everybody around them's residential, kind of like our villages. There's a lot of residential in the villages, so I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think that a sign like the car wash sign belongs here,
Mm.
but just, I mean, even out here, if we had, like, going through Elk Rapids, a
Mhm.
sign that tells you what's happening.
Oh, yeah.
stuff.
At the
You know, those
park.
I think are very useful to
Right.
communicate with the community.
Yeah, for like a governmental purpose or public
Yeah.
purpose. Yeah. And I think that's a lot more townships are getting into it because you can say meeting tonight,
Right.
or planning commission meeting next week. So, that component of it.
So let me take a shot at that. I think the brightness is covered, might be covered already in 3A.7C, where it talks about illumination.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know what 3,000 degrees Kelvin is, but if that's consistent with other signage ordinances about not being too bright, I think brightness is what my concern would be, how bright it's on and for how long.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's covered by the definition of too bright by 3,000 Kelvin, I think we have that covered. I think in prohibited signs, I think what we're talking about is monitors, right, that show motion. And in section B, it talks about animated signs employing actual motion. One of the intents is to not have it disturb drivers. Maybe we have a section 4 after mechanically activated and flashing. I don't know what the real name for those are, but they're like big TVs, so I say monitors. If that's something there aren't any in the township now. If we think that's something we don't want to have in the township, maybe we call it out in a new section 4 and define it by whatever it's officially called. So there isn't a 2 foot by 3 foot or a 3 foot by 3 foot monitor that's showing something like a TV advertising a
Right.
business or yard sale or something.
Yeah. Does
That would be a way to cover it, I think, instead of addressing LED or any existing signage we have.
Yeah. Yeah, because we don't typically, people usually call them LED signs, but we've kind of gotten away from it just because LED now is used as a light source for various, everything.
And they've made them sort of not so bright.
Right.
too.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess that would be the question is, do we, as a township, do you want to allow kind of these monitor signs as a first? And then if you say yes, then we should have, I think you're right with the light, but then we can also add in some language about, at night kind of dimming them because when it gets darker and they're super bright or not using a white background, that makes it hard to read or distracting. So we can go down that road if you're interested in allowing that type of sign. So I think that's the first question. Is there interest in allowing, we call them monitor signs because I think everybody kind of gets it at that point. And then we can figure out if we should draft language for it.
So could you clarify a monitor sign? Is it the sign that has a moving message?
I'm going to say it could potentially, but you can regulate that. I'm just talking about some sort of a screen. You can change the message. It's all lit up by lights. Like it projects its image by lights, like a TV. Kind
It's
of like
not-
a TV, but you know.
Not pixelated versus
Yeah.
the signs that.
I mean, it could be as simple as, it could be like a monitor, but it could be one row, they kind of the old school ones is that it had a word that trailed through and you kind of read it as it goes by. I think this ordinance doesn't allow that because it talks about moving signs, but that's the same kind of a sign.
Oh, you're including that in the monitor.
Yeah.
Okay.
So any type of a sign that uses lights in
Lights
some
to
way.
make a picture. Of
Right.
some sort.
Right. Not your
Words.
typical static sign of the past. No. So,
I'm not opposed to them.
I'm
I
not- I'm
think
not
that there's a
either.
lot of benefit to having them. And
To
so I
having
would
them?
be, yeah, like I said, communicating to people, communicating something to someone. I think they can be very useful.
So you'd like to include them, but put limit on a time for either when they're on or how bright they are?
Yeah, size, illumination, time, yeah.
Mhm.
Maybe even where, potentially, what zoning,
Like in the village or commercial, but not
yeah.
What do the other commissioners think?
I'm not too in favor of the glitzy moving, and maybe we're not talking about the same thing.
No, well, not moving anyway necessarily.
Okay, but I'm still having a little bit of hard time getting the visual of exactly what we're talking about, what we're trying to, or what we might be prohibiting, so. I'm not exactly clear on that.
Well, I'm trying to think, is there a sign in well, the sign in the park in Elk Rapids, when you're driving up 31, there's is that Rotary Park right there? They have the sign and usually it says, farmer's market, whatever the date is.
Oh, you mean the chamber?
Yeah.
Is that what the chamber,
Yeah,
yeah?
it does change. I think there'll be a few that
Yeah,
it
by the
cycles
Swan.
through, but even if it didn't cycle through anything, if it said today, like you were saying,
Right.
meeting today, special meeting, that would be helpful.
Yeah, that type of a sign is what we're talking about. But it could have anything. I mean, it could have words. Somebody could put up, a lot of people like to put like the American flag on them, or it could be a picture or an image. They have the capabilities of doing that as well, or I don't think there's any changeable billboards, but when we don't allow billboards, but whatever one of those electronic billboards looks like, you could have on a smaller scale.
And my caution is, because of our hamlets are so heavily populated, and I'm just trying to envision, as our community progresses, what the potential could be for that. So that's why I'm being a little bit protective here, I think.
I wouldn't even be opposed to saying that it's for government purposes. I don't know if you can do that or like allow just certain government buildings, or I just think there's a lot of benefit.
I mean, as government, we don't have to follow our own ordinances, so it wouldn't matter if we allowed them or didn't allow them. We could still put one out there.
So even like down at the park or something.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
So is that kind of sign covered anywhere in the ordinance right now? Or you'd have to sort of you have to connect a few things, right?
Right,
So we would want to spell it out specifically.
right. Yeah, so right now I'm just,
Allowable sign, but put whatever restrictions on it we would want to have. Is that right?
right, yeah. So I kind of have Laura and Jason, you're okay with them with regulations of some sort? Other end of the table. Bill, Barbara.
Well, and what Jason said, what we have now, I think what we have now, the two examples, there's no opposition for me, but I am concerned as we go down this road that there might be things that aren't necessarily consistent with our quiet rural environment that is such a strong value in our greater community.
So if someone came in, they would need to get a permit, and it could be part of a meeting or a public comment on it.
Nope, it
That-
would just be a permit. It'd just be through the office.
And
I mean,
so-
I wouldn't recommend you make it a special use or anything like that for signs. I mean, potentially you could go that way if you wanted to. I just would highly say don't go that way. Either allow them or don't allow them. You can pick the zoning district if you do want to allow them.
Okay.
Well, explain to me, let me hear more. What would we be losing by not having them?
As far as what's there today, I think we would just have the ones that exist today, you wouldn't be able to replace, right? They'd be non-conforming.
And the ones that we have, is it because of the lighting? Or is it the
'Cause it's
type
a-
of light?
It's that it's an electronic changeable copy is the issue. So like the gas station could have where they manually change the numbers. That would be allowed because it's, manually. But the electronic portion of the lighting, that part of it is what the issue is. And we can't write into the ordinance that only gas station signs get to be changeable letters. That's because that was something ordinances used to have too, but that's not content neutral.
Okay.
So,
So it's the electronic changing of lettering. It's not that it's a sign where you can manually put the change, and I see what the advantage of,
But it's basically a monitor. So you input it on a keyboard and it comes out on a monitor, just a
Right.
sign.
right.
I think what you said depicts what it is, electronically programmable.
So I have no opposition to it. What I would want to have is live motion on it, TV, because I think that is distracting. And I think that's one of the intents and objectives, is to not be distracting to drivers. A sign that's electronic can change, that's fine, but when you show a commercial on a sign, I don't think that fits. And I think that's
Okay.
what,
That's what I'm talking
right,
about.
I think if we we don't want that, but I think that is the current, not just future of signage. It's less about sticks and changing numbers, and it's from inside the store to change
Okay.
it and it comes up on screen.
Yeah.
But I don't think it fits the character of the township to have a running commercial on a
Right.
3x3 or 2x3 monitor.
I'd agree with that.
Would this be covered by 3A.7F? A sign incorporating electronic message shall be considered an illuminated sign?
a portion of it, because some of the districts don't allow for you to have illuminated signs, mostly on the wall signs. In your residential districts, I guess, for the freestanding and the wall signs, you're not allowed to have illuminated, or your temporary signs cannot be illuminated.
Right, but
So
if you've got a sign in an area where they do allow illuminated
Illumination.
signs, that would cover, wouldn't that F cover that situation?
not fully. I don't think that I'm not comfortable with it meeting, well, at least it's not limiting change of time of message or anything like that. Right there. I think it's just saying it's an illuminated sign. And if we don't allow, so then you would go and say, if we don't allow illuminated signs there, then it's not allowed. So essentially, because we're calling them out here as saying that there could be considered illuminated sign, you could have them in the village business, and the commercial district for all types of signage.
So what if we created another cut sheet? We have one that's called freestanding and add the word static sign standards. And we had another one that was freestanding electric sign standards. And some of the things we're interested in and disinterested in could be put into a sheet like this with
Yeah.
a picture of an example of a sign. That way you wouldn't have to pick through a few different sections of what's prohibited and what's allowed with
Right.
certain criteria.
That's what I would do. I would make
I
them
think the
their
one
own
pager is a
type of
great
sign.
thing,
Yeah.
to have everything down on one page. And that's one that seems like we're all sort of fumbling around with a bit, with trying to define what we want, what we don't want, and what it is.
Yeah. So it looks like we need a little bit of work on the electronic changeable signs.
And I think if you do that, then you don't need that F under
Yeah.
3.3A7. Wouldn't that just go away then? Because it would be
Yeah.
covered by,
Yep.
yeah, okay.
So if we're looking at that, does anybody have a preference if they're only on freestanding signs or if they can be wall signs, and you're indifferent to if they're located on one or the other? Doesn't matter? Okay, doesn't matter. I'm getting head shakes. Okay. And then,
Are you saying, so maybe it's not freestanding electric sign, it's just electric sign standards?
yep,
That makes more sense, because I think on a building
yeah.
would be fine, freestanding would be fine, as long as it's what we've all
Okay.
talked about.
So my next comment related to that is we allow up to 50 square feet of for a freestanding sign. One sign. It's not counting the second sign. Would you want to allow someone to have all of that 50 square feet be electronic, or do you want to say a certain percentage of the sign can be electronic? Or a maximum square footage of it can be electronic?
I would say not all of it. I don't think that would be necessary.
Right. So when you're looking at it and you're going 50, so you would say probably 24 square feet would be the maximum size.
I
Right?
think that would be plenty.
4 by 6. Is that too big?
So 20 square feet is about the size of that whiteboard. If we're looking at 15 square feet right there, right? Close. Pretty subjective. That's, I wouldn't want it to be that big, but I don't know how much smaller than that, or that would be the maximum I would want it to be. But that's just me.
So
Yeah,
that's like 6 by
I would
3.
say that as a max would be more than enough. If you said, Laura, half it, I'd be like, all right. That,
Jason, what do you think? Is there a particular size that is too small, too big?
I mean, I don't know. I keep going back to the real estate sign down at the Torch River Bridge. I know there was a big controversy about that. That's a pretty big sign, but I mean, again, I don't know, who am I to say what's big and what's small? So
and that moved too.
that
right?
one moved. Yeah, it's,
I guess my question would be, since it wouldn't be moving at all, you'd have to be able to state whatever you want to state
Sure.
on it, static. So like how big is that out there?
I'm just
thinking
thinking
of
size.
the size of the letters, how many words would you have to put on there to say something meaningful?
I mean, I could go either way. I mean, it's,
That would be visible from the road, driving by.
Okay.
So where are we, Sarah?
I took half. I said 24 square feet of the 50 can be electronic, was where we started. That's not 24 square feet, that thing right there. Because that's like 3, that's 5, so it's like 6 by 4. Oh, yeah. No, 6 by 4 would be 24. So that size.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
That would be the maximum of your 50. So you could have a sign twice as big as that. And that would be all of your signage, and half of it could be
Mhm.
electronic. Okay. Um,
I feel like we're gonna regret that or something, the way you said that.
I'm gonna stay out of it. I mean, it's just, it is the way technology is going. It's the way that people are able to share their businesses for it. And then it kind of goes down to some of Denise's comments about character and what you're looking for in your community. So I think that we can help to kind of control some of that with, the lighting intensity, especially in the dark
Right.
and the white color, to help so that you can see it. It's not distracting. The changing of the messages, the timing of that. And something that we would write in there is that it's an instantaneous change. So it's none of that fading in and out of the words.
Right.
It changes from one
That's the
message to the
motion.
next message
Mhm.
for that. And you don't have any flags waving on them. It's a flag or it's, whatever, and it doesn't scroll or anything. So I can work on some of that language and we can talk about it again next month for that. So yeah, that'll work. And then we'll have to have another public hearing again, once we nail all the language out, but we can continue with our public hearing tonight, get our input, and there may be some other changes you want to talk through, and then move forward from there.
Okay, so on to public comment.
Mhm.
Great. Thank you all. Do you have any public comments?
He did when we started. So did you had some cards already or no?
I just had Michelle.
Oh,
Oh. So formal. Michelle, you're up.
yep.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, please. You got to talk kind of close to it so that we can catch you on YouTube. You're welcome to take it out of there and hold it if you want, or you're gonna have to get closer, like right up on it. Yeah. I did turn it on. Can you hear it? Jack has got me set up for extra batteries on hand.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I
I got
really
it.
want to first say thank you to the township for all the work that you do. Obviously, this is not an easy thing to just get through quickly. Michelle Merrifield, I work at Torchlight Cafe. I'm here on their behalf tonight. I live in Banks Township, so I'm not here very often. Just would like to ask you to take into consideration the businesses in the district. And what their reasons for their signage is. We have a hard time communicating to people that were there. You might find that very hard to believe because you live here, but I had a photographer that lives in Charlevoix, or grew up in Charlevoix and now lives in Traverse City, who was in on Saturday. Thought we were just a place for bagels and coffee. Had no idea that we were a full-service restaurant serving lunch and dinner. So it's hard to get our message out. So we have our sign. We do have an open sign that is illuminated that we turn off when we're not there. We have the medallions up on the bell tower. We think of those more as branding than as signage. We wanted to put the signs at the edges of the property on 88 and 31 with the music information. We built the little timber frames and had the signs put in. The township said we weren't able to have those signs. They were in the right of way of the road. There was legal things with the state. We went to the state and the state gave us, I have it with me, the state gave us our permit and gave us the clearance to have those signs exactly where those timber frames are built. We are trying to make it look nice. We don't want to put green stakes in the ground and vinyl banners, which are allowed. They're temporary. They would be up to say, we have music this weekend, and then they would be down. We're trying to make it look nicer so it fits the community. And now that we have the permit from the state, we're still being told that we cannot put those signs in because we have too many signs. But we were told we could put them on the fence. So now they're on the fence and the frames are there, or we could take it all down and go back to vinyl banners, but it really wouldn't make sense and it wouldn't look good for the township. So we're just asking that you would consider that scenario when you put your plans in place. And again, I do thank you for your work. So that's all.
Thank you. Bob, you're up if you'd like to go next.
Bob Hawkins, 12373 3rd Street in Kuwait. So just a couple of thoughts about the signs. Signs are sort of a tricky thing. They have a job to do, but they have to be good neighbors to the people that are around. So your sign can't say, hey, I got some gas in here and I got some really cold beer. It needs to be a little bit more than that, short of a guy standing out there twirling a sign and an arrow, trying to get you to come in. So some of the signs that we see with the flashing, the animation and everything, it's a little much and it's a little hazardous to drivers. So as Bill said earlier about the old time, I missed part of the meeting. So if you talked about this already, just cut me off. Years ago, we had stationary signs and the guy went out with a stick. He would put the letters up. And he might change the message once a day or twice a day or even 3 times a day, depending. And, that was fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So I guess my point is the fact that you have a sign that changes its message from time to time shouldn't be a bad thing. That's the nature of signs because things change. We need to convey a new message all the time. Whether or not it's an LED sign, an LED is just a method of illumination. I don't think it should be singled out or targeted as being good or bad. It could be incandescent, it could be LED, it could be halogen, it could be all kinds of things. But the LED is the new thing because they're cheaper to operate, and for the electronic boards, they're easily programmable. You can do it with an incandescent, but the LEDs are a little bit easier and better to see. So I guess the thing that we don't want is a high contrast, very bright, moving kind of thing that's going to distract people and neighbors, but allow our people to get whatever message they need to get out and convey. Don't forget that our master plan calls for these businesses to be sort of grouped into Eastport and Torch Lake. So we don't want to be the guy that buys the house next to the airport and then complains about the airplanes. We've dictated that these businesses are there, so we have to strike a happy medium to allow them to survive and not be a nuisance. So somewhere in that, there's a middle ground, I'm sure. So I just wanted to make those 2 comments while you guys are making your decision, something to think about. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. King, you're up. Last one.
All right, well, thank you for letting us speak here tonight. And I was on the planning commission for a number of years, and I always hated the guy that came in after we'd done months and months of work making ordinance changes and so forth, but unfortunately, I'm that guy today. First thing I wanted to address is the electronic signs. And in my opinion, it is totally against any of the electronic signs with monitors or I think you can change sign by manually is fine. But I think it's totally against the rural character of just what we, in this ordinance, change on paragraph E of 3A number 1. It's totally against, all those signs are against the rural character in my point of view. And I don't think they should be allowed at all. But with that said, I think you left agriculture out of the ball game here. It's my opinion, ag should have the same square footages as commercial or village business. I think that the signs should be, well, there are a couple of things I want to hit on, but another one is the maximum height. I mean, the current ordinance is at 20 feet? And that I do believe is too tall, but I also think an ag, you've got it at 8 feet and 10 feet in commercial and village business. And my thought is that all 3, ag, commercial, and village business, should be 12 feet, would not be unreasonable. And one of the big ones is the number of signs that I believe, again, I'm just one in the crowd here, but that the old ordinance was quite effective in having 1 sign per 100 feet of frontage with a maximum of 3 signs. And how that relates to me in ag is, a farm can have 600 foot of road frontage. And if they want to put in a winery or which is allowed in the ordinance, or some other uses, then I don't think it's unreasonable to have a 50 square foot sign and two 24 square foot signs, one for northbound, one for southbound, and one pointing at the door. I mean, but, you know, I don't think that's unreasonable at all. But I just feel that you just rubbed agriculture out of the whole equation by limiting 8-foot height, one per parcel, 20 square feet. You know, I mean, I certainly hope you relook at that. What else did I have? The one other thing, and maybe this would kind of lean towards the cafe as well, that, you know, I think there should be 3 signs along the main side, the main road, but if you're on a corner, it certainly wouldn't hurt to, and I don't think it would be too obtrusive to have a sign on the side road. And I can think of some areas, same as agriculture, down on Yelta Road, there's a couple of farms, if they put in a winery or a cidery or something that is, you know, used by right, then that would be great. And then I just had a couple of other things, but those are my major things, is how I think agriculture signs should be treated the same as commercial business, commercial and village business. And then I had just a couple ancillary things on 3A 6, paragraph 2. You may want to restrict the framework around a sign if you don't want to have, you know, a huge, I mean, you can put a small sign with a lettering, the way it's worded, that you know, the framework is not included with the sign. I forget how it's worded exactly, but it has to do with where the lettering is and so forth. I mean, that could be a problem, perhaps. You could have a 20-foot long sign with the, you know, in the middle of it, have your message. I mean, not that I'm not going to do that, but it could happen. I see there was this prohibiting feather signs, and I think they have a place with seasonal businesses in the village and whatnot. Hey, we're open, you know, just a sign by the road, and, you know, not a permanent sign as a feather sign, but I think those would be useful and advantageous to the businesses and, you know, again, in ag. And then on 3A.9, paragraph D, a legal non-conforming sign, in my opinion, should be able to be replaced if it's damaged or destroyed, regardless of the cost. I mean, if a tree drops on the sign and demolishes it, if it's a legal sign, then, you know, according to the township, then I think it should be replaced as well. But that's pretty much all I have to say. But I just think that the electronic signs, in my opinion, take from the rural character of our township. And again, I'd like to see ag treated the same as commercial business and village business. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah, what next?
So now it's back to conversation by the planning commission. If you have any additional changes you want to make before next month's meeting. So, you know, so far I'm going to take the comments we talked about earlier. So I don't know if there's any public comment that you'd like to address or think about further. So any discussion?
I would like to agree with Mr. King that I think we need to have a section that addresses ag. And I don't think his comments were out of line at all with what we have in here. And I think as far as the electronic signs go, the unfortunate thing is, we're not there yet with respect to this technology having hit the township, the electronic sign stuff. We're kind of trying to get out in front of that bus instead of waiting until it all happens and then say, oh, wait a minute, we don't like that. So I sort of feel like we should have something in here about the electronic signs, but I don't know exactly what it should be. I think that's all I had.
I agree with the addressing ag. I think that should be included. Now I'm going back to, I'm not quite sure what we're talking about with the electronic sign. Is it that we're electronically changing it instead of manually changing the message? Or does it look like a commercial TV picture that we're, so I'm back to, I'm not quite sure what that visual is. If it's the modern version of changing a price for a gas station, or changing the special of the day, or that it's music tonight, or does it look like,
It can be both. It's all.
okay.
So it could be a sign that just has words that says music tonight, or that sign could have some sort of an image on it that looks like a picture, like a TV. I mean, the technology used to be where it was just words. They were always orange. Usually the bulb color was orange, and that's what the image that was depicted. But, you know, as time goes on and technology advances, they're essentially a TV that's out there. So anything that you can see or do on a TV, somebody could potentially put on their sign, and treat it like a sign.
Any comments? Based on the public comment.
Yeah, I agree with ag. I think in our charts that we've got ag in there already. To adjust those would be easy enough. And I agree that they could be the same as commercial and village business.
So we said we need to have an ag section. You say we agree.
There-
It's in the cut,
Yeah.
what I'm calling the cut sheets. I think the
Yeah.
comment was, it should be the same as village or commercial, not separate. Now, I'll look at just freestanding signs. For ag, it's 20 square feet, 8-foot max height, one per parcel. And where we get to village or commercial, I think the comment was, got a lot of frontage, why am I limited to one when village and commercial is not? So is what you're saying is it should be the same
I
as
think
the
it should
public
be the
comment, or there's a different section that we need to have all about ag? Just to address it in
Just
these
that
cut
chart,
sheets?
yeah.
So you like what's in the commercial to move that into the ag?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's anybody in the ag district can have a freestanding sign, even if they're not a business, that says.
Watch out, people. That counts me. So watch out, that counts me. I wouldn't do that, but
So, and you like the 10 feet high too, like basically mirror the commercial district to the ag. So everything that's in the last line, I'll just add. What about illumination in the ag district?
Well, Jason, you have any thoughts on that? Let's talk about ag first, and we'll talk about electronic.
No, I agree. Actually, before Jim got up there, I was whispering to these guys, does this pertain to our ag land? And 10 minutes later, Jim was up asking about it. So, no, I agree with it.
Okay. Sarah, what was your question about the illumination, the same or different than commercial?
So right now, the limitation in that chart for freestanding says in the ag district, illumination is prohibited. In the commercial district, we allow for illumination. So do you have a preference on that in the ag district, if it's illuminated or not?
So I'm thinking about what the gentleman said. Ag land is ag land. I would think that there would be a difference in illumination. Ag land that has a use by right as a cidery, then I think it is more like commercial illumination, but I'm not sure that that is what all the other commissioners think. I think, I'm thinking about it in my life, driving by farms and ag properties, there are signs.
Right.
Usually, whether it's the seed sign or something. When a commercial business starts up on ag property, If it's used by right,
I mean, it could be it could be the farm market, it could be the U-Pick,
right?
it could be a winery, any of those uses. So right now, I'm not sure what it says about illumination. I think that there just have not been. I'm trying to think, maybe the landscaping company that's on the bend just down the way here, that one might light up. Or like the contractor. Not the, no, that one doesn't light up.
Pine Hill still uses manual sign.
Well, I know, but no, like
Excavating.
internally, does it, does the, can you see that sign at night? Like, does it have a light inside?
I could tell you when I go home.
Me too. So is it illuminated from within? Yeah,
Agamig's illuminated, yeah. The airport's lit up.
okay. Do you have a
I
preference?
don't know if George Drought's sign's lit up or not. I think that might be too.
Okay. Do you have a preference on if it's like internally or externally illuminated? So you could say in the ag district, it has to be externally illuminated. So then they'd have to put a light kind of on the top that shines down. The reason I ask is that looks a little bit less commercial when they're not
Right.
lit from the inside, when they have light shining down on them. It has a little bit different feel to it, potentially in the ag district. But that would be up to whatever you'd like to see.
I mean, they're all surrounded by, ag is all egg and timber touching it, so my only concern would be like, what is around it? Is it going to be distracting or
Right.
not good for neighbors?
I mean, I guess in the ag, you'd have, yeah, I mean, single family dwellings too. So, or in the timber, single family dwellings. Does anybody have a preference on being externally or internally illuminated in the ag district? No?
I think, I do. I'd rather be externally rather than internally. I think I propose we take out illumination prohibited and define what kind of illumination we think it should have. And I do think, and, I think all three comments had to do with, the character of the community. And a commercial lighted sign in ag does not seem right. But illuminated, having signs consistent with village and commercial does. But with different illumination. That'd be my opinion.
Well, why don't I put externally illuminated signs in there? We have to come back to this next month to think about it a little bit more. So, and hopefully we'll maybe have a full planning commission by then to be able to talk through that. But that kind of will get us thinking about if you do have a thought on the difference on it. And when you're driving around looking at signs, like when you head home or if you're out at night, how the sign is illuminated and the look of it, or if you have any thoughts on that. Okay. I will update that ag.
Now, let's talk a little bit more about the electronic. I feel like we have some different opinions, some different images in our head of what it is and what it could be used for. In the freestanding sign standard, Torch Bay Inn says vacancy down below it. Can say no vacancy. That's something they push inside to make it say no vacancy or vacancy. I don't know what the technology is, but probably if that was built recently, it's probably like a small monitor. I don't think what fits in our township would be a board that big that is a TV that could have any image on it. Unless we could, prohibit a certain amount of brightness to it. But having some part of a sign, like vacancy and no vacancy, I do think makes sense. So I think we need to see some pictures of what Laura's thinking versus what I'm thinking, a TV, and see if we're talking about the same thing or not. I think the ease of changing it makes all the sense in the world, but I wouldn't want to see in 5 years, 5 or 6 TVs that big on 31 or 88. And then trying to figure out how we can control what's on it, what moves, how bright it is. And yet I also don't see, even though I've seen big people going up with a pole to change letters either. That I think is
not
gone
fun.
or will soon be gone. But I know that car wash you're talking about in Traverse City. I see them all over the place. I'm shocked that, I think they've become so inexpensive that it is an easy way to advertise, and boy, do you see them. I don't think it's a boy, do you need to see them kind of place here.
Well, I think that's a good point. Can I ask the planning commission that in your travels over the next month, maybe 3 weeks, because I'm going to send them early, you could take pictures of signs that when you see them, you're like, I like that, specific to an electronic sign. So yeah, this vacancy, I don't know, it might be neon on there. If it's old enough, it might be a neon sign, but, versus an LED sign. But if you see something that you like out there, you're like, I like this, and kind of try to identify what about it that you like. If it's the size, that, is the message, and take pictures that you don't like too, because that helps for us to write the regulations. And if you like all of them, that works too. But to kind of give some context, and then maybe we can, if I say, hey, turn that in by a certain time, that might give us a little bit of time too, to try to do some more research, maybe on some size and things like that, for the packet, or at least when we come into the meeting, to be able to talk about it.
Okay.
Because then that's, your vision of what a sign is and your vision, and, everybody's vision is different. So sometimes those images, and you can look on the internet too, you don't have to, but if you can find pictures online, you go, I consistently like what this looks like. I want to have this in my community, or I really don't like this. That would be very helpful to me.
Okay.
And I think to the planning commission, to make sure we're all talking about the same thing. So I'll send out an email, and I'll send out a reminder email.
And send
And
you pictures?
Yep.
Okay. So is everybody good with that?
Yep.
I just wanted to say something. The Hacienda sign, the restaurant in South Elk Rapids, I've had to go there 6 times in the last 4 weeks because the letters keep blowing off the thing. So, something to consider.
But it's sold.
Yeah.
I saw that today driving up.
Oh, one thing that Mr. King brought up about the 3A62, I agree. I envisioned some crazy sign, the external part of the sign. I designed a bunch in my head just then, and you could get pretty wild. You could get wild.
You're talking about the framework bracing?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I drew a picture
Ooh.
of something really with the small sign in the middle, but the framing and bracing, I think that's a really good catch.
Yeah,
The framing and bracing could be any size anybody wanted. Again, I don't know that
right.
anybody would, but the ordinance says that's not included. So if somebody really wanted to stand out,
Yeah.
sell
I
ice
think you-
cream,
I think you could do some really cool things, cool artistic things, but yeah, it could get wild.
so maybe there's a way to limit the entire structure, was to take into account some amount of square footage for bracing, but still have that limited, because this is basically unlimited framework and bracing and trim.
I've had some that limit it to like additional 50%. So, for that to deal with it. Cause we had some, they called them monument signs. So typically monument signs short, it's got landscaping, but they just made the 20-foot wide monument sign because it didn't have a pole, because it was a pole cover to make the whole thing. Like Chase kind of did that with their signage for a while. It was, this skinny, and it was a pole sign, but you didn't count part of it. So I'll work on some language for that.
Okay. We're ready to move on to, I have a question about the Torchlight Cafe signage. I wasn't sure I understood all of that, but so the state approved something, but the township didn't, and the response might be a bunch of vinyl signs instead of, did we deny something from the current ordinance that's changed now, or would it not change?
Yeah, the current ordinance comes back to the 3 signs that you can have. So you're allowed to have, so authorized with a sign permit in that district is the business identification sign. So that identifies the business or commercial, that's 50 square feet. And then you can add advertising and display signs, and these are advertising your goods and services offered, and you can have up to 2 that are 25 square foot each. That's what you can have. So they have their freestanding sign, kind of in the parking lot there. And then the 2 signs that are up on the bell tower are the 2 additional signs. So outside of that, you're not allowed any additional signage.
Is the bell tower a sign, or is it the name of the
Yeah,
restaurant, or is it the
so
same?
It's because it's got the logo it's representing, it's advertising. So the sign, the definition of a sign is pretty broad in that aspect. And so to catch all of those things we're not in public comment. You're welcome to stop into the office and talk about it, but any type of representation of a business, that counts as a sign.
Well, I'm curious about the size though, because they've got 50 square feet for one sign and then they can have 225 square foot for the other signs. Are those signs at Torch Lake Cafe that big?
I don't think so. I don't remember
what I
what they
meant.
are because they're a circle, but I don't think the ones on the building are that
They're
big.
not that big.
I don't know what they are, 12 or 15 maybe.
Yeah, and I don't know what the one is out by the road, but that's not that big either, really.
Yeah, I
So
don't
that's when
remember
it
what
comes
that one
down
is.
to how many.
Right, but if they took one of those signs,
That-
the one
that's
out by the road and
kind of
made
what I
it
would-
larger,
I was thinking about consolidating something.
yeah, that might
But-
do it. I don't know. Should be able to work with it somehow.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And
I
so,
would not like vinyl signs because that's allowed somehow,
right,
something that's
Well,
temporary and up there and up and down.
Right.
Is there a way for the township to work with the applicant? Or is
There-
it just, this is the ordinance and that's what the ordinance says?
that's what the ordinance, so right now, we don't allow any temporary signage basically in your commercial district unless it's real estate or political or something like that. But so that's where a lot of the commercial businesses, they would advertise something and then the township comes along and says, you can't do it. It's temporary sign. It's not one of your freestanding signs. With the case law, you can't regulate real estate, political. You just have to call them temporary signs. So it does expand the availability to the commercial businesses to put temporary signs out where previously they weren't allowed to, because unless they were real estate or political signs, they couldn't put them up there. But what to tell a business they can't put a political sign up, that's where you can, it's kind of this
Right.
temporary sign thing. So in one aspect, it becomes easier and because you can't read the sign to tell what it is, but it does offer that opportunity because that could be used to advertise a special or something on that temporary sign.
Okay.
So, but it could be anywhere. I mean, it could be like the Keep Torch Blue signs that you see out, or, a business could put that out in front of their place, or so. Depending on where you stand on signage, that's either good or bad,
Right.
compared to what we've had.
Okay, any other discussion on the public comments?
I got one more.
Sure.
I also agree with Mr. King. I was looking at it earlier. I don't think 8 foot's tall enough. And my thinking is if your sign is only 8 foot tall and it's 4 foot long or wide, however you want to go, so it's hanging down 4 foot off the ground, that's almost like obstruction of view for like cars. And I think that's why signs need to be up a little bit higher so that they're not in the view of when you're driving. It's my opinion, but I think it should be higher than 8 foot. Not 20 foot, but I think it should be higher than that.
We ended up going up to 10 because that was what was in the commercial district. My only additional comment about that is that all of these signs have to be set back 10 feet from the road right of way. So hopefully that would make kind of clear vision areas when you get to your corners, especially because you've got, they're 10 feet back from the road right of way for that. But that is something to consider, I guess, as
So you're
well.
proposing that the max height for ag on freestanding sign standards is the same as village and commercial?
Mm-hmm.
I think so.
Okay. Yeah, my takeaway from the comments when we talked about ag signs is essentially I was going to mirror everything that's in the commercial and put that in the ag line. The only difference is going to be the illumination
Right.
part is going to say externally illuminated
That's the way I
only.
understood it
Okay.
also. Yep.
Okay. Any other sign comments for tonight? Okay. I'll send out the email, kind of with the pictures with a deadline. I'll try to send out a reminder email as well
Okay.
before that. I think that'll be helpful to the discussion.
Let's move on to item 9B, review of bylaws.
Okay, so I just threw these in here. Every so often we should take a look at them. I think they were amended in 2020 last. One of my concerns was about the layout of the agenda. At a minimum, I would make changes to that. We don't currently lay out our agenda based on that format.
Are you talking about general agendas or the public hearing agendas?
This one has public hearing on it. I'm talking about anything, so it's on page 5 of 11, item F, agendas. Personally, I would take out how the agenda is laid out in general. Leave that up to the chair on the meeting, how it flows. But if anybody, yeah, because that just allows flexibility based on what's happening. Right. I mean, typically it's all the same order, but there may be a reason depending on whatever's happening.
To move which one? I missed it. I was looking
Just to eliminate all
Yeah.
that bold text.
Okay.
That just gives the freedom for each agenda to be,
That makes a lot more sense than moving 9 things around like I was doing.
right?
All right.
So if you're comfortable removing that, that would be my proposed change. And I don't know if there's anything
Well,
else.
Let me get back up for it. Is there a way to make it, here's a suggested or example for future planning commissions? I mean, I think the order that we have does make some sense to have the Pledge of Allegiance, right, if we open the meeting, to ask for conflict. I think that's probably new that something was put in maybe a few years ago. I'm looking if you were here. To have the approval of minutes certainly up there, as opposed to just deleting it. Would it be reasonable to keep it in and say, here's an example of a pretty reasonable agenda that people in 2023 thought made some sense. You can adjust it as necessary.
What if I put the
I'm
minimum
just suggesting,
required
if everybody else wants-
topics?
If everybody else is good with getting rid of them, I'm just,
But I could put the minimum agenda items, so then you would have the pledge minutes. They can be in whatever order, but these need to be on your agenda. Could we do it that way?
yeah, I guess I'd
Okay.
change to, here's a suggested order.
Suggested order?
As opposed to they can be in whatever order, because it could be in whatever order, but I don't think some orders make sense.
Right. Oh,
Some
yeah.
folks spent some time just 3 years ago on this saying, we've already changed it, but so we clearly can put it in order, but I'd say here's a suggested order.
Okay. So I'll update that to say suggested
If
order.
that was done in like 1985, I would say start from scratch, but it was 2020, they did it, so, I don't want to undo work that was done by some folks that clearly put some thought and time in it. We should take advantage of that.
Did anybody else have any comments or questions or thoughts about the bylaws?
Oh. Oh.
Okay.
Good times, good times.
There wasn't really anything that, I guess stood out to me. It does talk about, what your requirements as a planning commissioner are, duties of the planning commission.
We did this before you came along, didn't we, Sarah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So I will, I'll just make those edits and then we can bring them back next month and then you can vote to approve them or adopt them with the changes.
Okay.
Perfect. So the next item on there was your annual report. The planning commission, it was the same 4 planning commissioners that were here the last 2 meetings, so they were uncomfortable making a motion to adopt it without more eyes on it. So Bill and Jason, you're here. I don't know if you have any additional comments related to it. Kevin still isn't here, but that's 1 at least instead of 3, so.
No, I read it and it sounds good to me.
I have something I'd like to see corrected. It says that the master plan is updated every 5 years. And in the last paragraph, in the first paragraph, it says planning commission took its first look at the draft zoning ordinance, rewrite and decided to not move forward with the review until the master plan is updated. It isn't required to be updated every 5 years. It's required to be reviewed every 5 years to determine if there's a need to update it. So it should say
Yep.
reviewed, not updated.
Yep.
Both those places. Because we may find that we have a great master plan that we don't think it should be touched,
Good catch.
which is acceptable.
Okay.
Yeah, it kind of picks it up in the next sentence where it believes it should begin the update process, but you're right.
Perfect. Okay.
I only had a question, the budget. How was that determined?
What?
The
The
suggested budget.
The planning commission suggested the township budget's $50,000 for the effort in fiscal year 23,
That's a
24.
request to the board, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was just a number I put in there.
I'm sorry?
It was a number I put in there.
So do we think that can cover an update of the master plan?
I think that your update will go over 2 years.
What's the funny?
So,
She's already worked out the math and she knows what her quote's going to be. That's good.
no, I just know, Bill, you wrote last year's annual report, and I
Right.
can't remember. Did you put 75 in there for
I
or
think I had
something?
100. I mean,
Yeah.
and I know we talked about a lot more public outreach, a lot more input, therefore more meetings. I just want to make sure we're not having the cost based on 6 years ago, where it might not have had as much interest, as much outreach. And I can't think of anything that costs less now than 3 or 4 years ago. So, I mean, I was kind of pulled out of the air, but it was more than,
Yeah, I felt that same way. That's why I looked at Sarah and I'm like, is that enough? And she said, yes. So I said, okay.
we talked about different formatting, more graphics. I mean, we talked about things. I remember you talking about more illustrations of the character and the look and feel. I propose we do some specific plans for our hamlets that might have some design guidelines, things that signage, things like that cover, and I'm not sure that can all happen
Right.
for that price.
Right. We may have to do some of that hamlet work, get through the master plan and then go, okay, now we're going to focus on this hamlet and we're going to focus on this hamlet. Do you know, Jason, I don't know off the top of my head in the budget if there was money budgeted for it? Don't know. I can take a look or talk to Bob about it. I can't
I
remember.
mean, I can go through my paperwork, but I don't know it off the top of my
Yeah.
head.
I think
You don't know every line of the budget
No.
by memory?
It was
Really?
3 months of it.
I know I talked with Bob about it a couple of months ago. I just don't recall what the final decision was.
Yeah, we'll let them know easily that we need more money.
All right, so if you're looking for my concurrence, I think it looks fine.
Okay. So with the change of update, in the first and second sentence under looking
that.
forward to reviewed, are there any other changes? Okay. Are you comfortable making a motion to approve and forward to the board with those two
Yes, I'll
changes?
make a motion to approve the Torch Lake Township Planning Commission annual report with the revision to say that the master plan is to be reviewed every 5 years and considered for update and forward on to the township board. How'd I do?
Second.
I have a second. All in favor? And any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So that one passed. We're in the home stretch. Concerns of the commission, Chair. I have none. Members?
I'm good.
I'm good.
I just wanted to say, I noticed in the paper that the Elk Rapids, thank you. The Elk Rapids master plan, they have the nice little QR code you can scan. That was super cool. Let's do that. And I didn't realize that you could participate if you're not part of that community.
Yeah.
That's so weird to me. Is it required that it is noted that you are not?
No, you're not, the survey, you can make however you want to do it, but in their survey, it does have one of the questions is if you're a township resident or I'm sorry, a village resident, or where you live. I do believe. I should know. I wrote the
I
survey.
need to do it. I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely, but
I'm sure it mentions like where your address or not your specific address, but your zip code or if you're a village resident. Yes. Take the survey. Let me know what you
Okay,
think.
I will.
But they're going to be having an open house sometime. All the commercial stuff's in the open house. So if
Nice.
you're disappointed that it's not in the survey, it's intentionally not in the survey.
Okay,
So,
cool.
Yeah.
It's like a demo of what we're gonna get.
all right. I don't know, maybe don't take it.
Sarah, any concerns?
No concerns here.
Move 13.
Uh,
You're good, right?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Any public comment on anything not on tonight's agenda?
Thank you for your consideration.
On behalf of all of us, we say you're welcome.
Our supervisor's in the crowd.
What's that?
I said our supervisor's in the crowd. Bob, off the top of your head, not to put you on the spot, do you remember what we budgeted for the planning commission for this year?
150,000? Oh,
15,000 you have the idea behind it is to do the survey, and get that information first. And if we need some consultants, do it at the same time. But once you get the survey back, you get a feel for things, then we'll start looking at doing money. The other side of it is we focus on getting these ordinances passed.
right.
So that was what Andy and I discussed, that let's focus on that, and we'll get through the master plan, through the survey starting.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
All right, no other public comment. Call the meeting adjourned.
Do we got to vote on
Thank
that?
you.
Yeah, it can be adjourned by the chair.
Thanks, Chair. Appreciate it.
Nice job.
Thanks. Appreciate it.